now the U.S. Senate is going to consider blocking President Trump's national emergency declaration.
I really fear for our democracy when the body who creates the laws is telling the body who enforces the law, just don't enforce the law.
Beto O'Rourke will officially join a quest to become the next president of the United States.
We squarely confront the challenge of climate change because our very existence depends on it.
ICE wanted this illegal immigrant detained 9 times, and now he's charged with murder.
This guy's a monster. If the laws weren't as messed up as they were, our victim would be alive.
Actress Lori Loughlin was released, get this, on a $1 million bond.
They preach all the time about fairness and equality, and then they do something like this. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but sadly, I am not at all.
A 4-year-old boy is stealing hearts all across America with the national anthem.
I'll pause.
This is a defining moment of truth for this country and for every single one of us. The challenges that we face right now, the interconnected crises in our economy, our democracy, and our climate have never been greater. And they will either consume us or they will afford us the greatest opportunity to unleash the genius of the United States of America. This is going to be a positive campaign that seeks to bring out the very best from every single one of us, that seeks to unite a very divided country.
All right, the former Texas congressman throwing his hat in the ring after losing his congressional campaign to Senator Ted Cruz last year. Beto is now the 12th Democrat to officially declare a presidential run.
Yep, we've got some more room on the screen. Beto became a political celebrity by turning to social media. Here you can see his Instagram right there when he was having his teeth cleaned. Nonetheless, yesterday we had a really good idea that he was going to do this because he sent a text to a local station down in El Paso where he used to serve on the town council, then eventually became a member of the House of Representatives, served 3 terms there. But what's interesting, and we just had the screen up that showed the people who are, and there he goes, surfing into a big crowd of supporters. For the first time in his political career, he's actually going to face serious pressure from the political left because you know how primaries work. You know, right now it is a race to the left. You want to get noticed on the left, you try to out Bernie. So you've got somebody like Beto O'Rourke who says, I'd like to take down parts of the wall and I'd like Medicare for all. How do you pay for that? Well, look for him to go to the left. And now he's going to have more pressure from people who are even further to the left.
Well, if you're a voter and you don't know much about him, here are some of his positions. He's anti-border wall. He voted against ICE, voted against Kate's Law, voted against the Trump tax cuts. He supports single-payer health care, voted against restrictions on late-term abortions, voted against sanctioning Iran, and called law enforcement the new Jim Crow.
He told Barack Obama when Barack Obama met with him after he lost in November, he said, the big question you got to ask yourself, can you deliver Texas? Can you deliver Wisconsin and Pennsylvania? And he said, I feel I can. If he can deliver Texas, he's got the nomination. That's going to be
That's a big if.
That's a huge if because people have been saying Texas has been teetering for a while. Meanwhile, the big story at the University of Texas and USC, as well as Harvard and a few other schools, has been this wide-ranging bribery scandal. Right now, it's got 50 people caught up in it, including a handful of celebrities and a lot of CEOs, where they want to, at the nth degree, from changing, having people take their SATs and ACTs to actually having coaches make room for them on rosters on non-revenue sports teams like sailing, track, and soccer in order to get their kids into schools they don't deserve to get into. And it is such a sweeping story that really affects almost every household watching right now, whether you're a parent wondering why you did it the right way and if you hurt your kids by not cheating like this, or whether you're a kid who's emerging and beginning to apply for colleges, or somebody that just went through the system and had to give up that dream college because you didn't get in or couldn't afford it.
That's right. They took the place of people who really deserved it. Actress Lori Loughlin, she was released on that $1 million bond. Husband also in trouble, same with Felicity Huffman, along with a bunch of other people. And there was a news story about where her daughter was when she was being charged. Her daughter was down in the Bahamas on a $100,000 yacht.
$100 million yacht.
I mean, $100 million yacht that is owned by the president of the Board of Trustees of the University of Southern California.
That's right. TMZ is reporting that apparently the board, which he sits on, where Olivia Jade was on that Bahama cruise.
With his daughter.
Right, exactly. The board of USC will not decide the fate of the students in question. It's a question that will be answered by the president of USC. Now, here's the thing. And it's, these schools are in a pickle because according to the indictments, apparently a lot of the kids did not know what their parents were up to. So what will the school do? According to USC, they're going to review each case. At Santa Clara University, they said they would likely expel any student who knowingly participated. And they say if you don't have credible evidence, not sure it's ethical to punish the child who didn't know what their parents were up to.
I think it's a finite number of parents, kids that didn't know what their parents were up to. Plus, if the kids got in without knowing, they're going to get kicked out without knowing. So if they are going to school right now, there's no way those kids should stay in. It just doubles down the insult. Mark Riddell is also in trouble. He's the Harvard guy that's in his 30s now, who actually played tennis at Harvard, who basically was taking the test for all these guys at the IMG Academy.
He was 36 years old. He shows up to take a test for a high school kid. But then again, you got to keep in mind the proctors in some cases were actually in on the deal.
$200,000 they got.
There's a family here in New York. They spent $125,000 for their daughter. Listen to how they got the proctor. They paid this proctor to change her scores on ACT and SAT.
What was it originally?
So her original 600. ACT score was a 23 out of 36. Perfect score is 36. He changed it to 35. Or she. I don't know if the proctor's a boy or a girl. Almost perfect. SAT gave her a perfect score on math and a 700 in the literary section. I'm sure her teachers are like, hold on, how did she do so well?
That's kind of
we know what she really makes on her report card.
Kind of a red flag.
Dr. Drew Pinsky was on last night, and he said, listen, this is a bigger problem than just this.
All roads lead to narcissism. Really, we've had a narcissistic turn in this country for the last 30 to 50 years. When I first started working in a psychiatric hospital, I saw all kinds of different personality disorder diagnostic spectrums. Around the mid-90s, cluster B was all we saw. 100% of the time. Sociopath, narcissist, borderline. And if you are a parent, your child is an extension of you, and you cannot stand to see them uncomfortable. And so you have to save them from every discomfort. What their achievements are your achievements, so you have to make sure they achieve. It's a freaking mess.
You know what? It's not just the rich and famous. In the New York Post today, they talked to a college counselor who says that, not rich and famous parents bribe and cheat and lie all the time to try to get their kids into school. The quotation is, I knew parents who whipped up a charity for their kid and did a fake photo shoot with disabled children. The parents set it all up and said the kid raised all the money, but truly it was a single donor. The parents, it was just a scam to get the kids into college. So it's not just the rich and famous, it's everybody's trying to help their kid get into a college.
What good does that do? What does it teach the child? That you can lie your way through your life?
Game the system. Here's what Tommy Lahren.
In full disclosure, I just like to say that I did sell most of my daughter's Girl Scout cookies, but she only did it 1 year.
I sold all my daughter's Girl Scout cookies.
What kind of lesson you teaching her?
In this building,
I sold my own.
I sold 300 boxes, but everybody knew I wasn't a Girl Scout at the time. Tommy Lahren had this observation about the elites.
This is really bigger than just this scandal. This is just Hollywood in general. These elitists really never think that they're going to get caught. They think that there's a separate system for them, that they deserve it, that they're entitled to this. Meanwhile, they preach all the time about fairness and equality. Why are we still giving these people a pass? Why are we still idolizing them? Why are we still allowing them also to be the instructors of morality and listen to them on a variety of issues? We need to throw it out. We need to pay attention to average Americans and experts and stop giving Hollywood so much credit.
This is going to grow a lot bigger than 50. I think we're going to be reporting on this for a while. The FBI is going to go to town on it.
Do you think if the kids who don't know, should they still get kicked? Oh, you said
absolutely.
You think
they got to go out. That triples down on the wrong. You can't leave the kid into school they did not qualify for.
I agree, but then that changes their lives completely. And
their parents already put their hand on the scale.
Listen, the schools are going to decide on a case-by-case basis. I predict that a number of the kids whose parents did stuff will continue to go to those schools. They might drop out because of the scorching spotlight.
Of course.
But Elizabeth Warren, now, this is somewhat ironic. Elizabeth Warren, who now famously misrepresented her heritage on an application at Harvard and on a Texas bar card, she's slamming these parents who lied.
This is just stunning. I mean, the notion that people thought they could keep cheating like this and evidently built this huge cheating network in order for the children of the rich and the powerful to make it into fancy schools. You know, to me, it's just one more example of how the rich and powerful know how to take care of their own and everybody else just gets left behind. I think that's wrong.
Wow, I think for people who didn't care about her using her heritage before, now they will because of this story. It just brings to light that you have to be truthful when you fill out these forms.
I just hope I've never seen a story cross more boundaries than this. No one cares if you're a Republican or Democrat. Everybody knows this is wrong. Everybody has an experience directly or indirectly with this process. Even grandparents watching right now know what their grandkids are going through to get ready for a test. Schools you can't go to because you can't afford or can't qualify for. Sometimes people got to go to community college in order to get to a place where they have the academics to get into these schools.
Imagine if you applied to USC and you didn't get in, and then you watch the video of this young girl, Laura Laughlin's daughter, knowing she's on a $100 million yacht, which is fine. It's fine to make money. No problems there. You just can't lie. But can't use your status.
How many people inflate their resumes when they're looking for a job?
It's wrong. It's wrong to do that.
I'm telling you, a lot of people do it. How many people inflate their biographies when they apply to different schools or whatnot? Probably.
It doesn't
let us know what you think about it.
Right.
Friends at FoxNews.com or Facebook.
One of the reasons,
character is everything.
Yeah, one of the reasons, Jillian, you got hired, you said you were an astronaut.
Yes, I did.
And I think that was wrong.
I definitely inflated, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid.
That's good enough?
Yes.
Put it on your resume. That's good enough.
All right, let's get you caught up on what we're following here. And just moments ago, President Trump doubling down on his threat to veto the resolution to block his national emergency declaration. The president tweeting, quote, "A big national emergency vote today by the United States Senate on border security in the wall, which is already under major construction. I am prepared to veto if necessary. The southern border is a national security and humanitarian nightmare, but it can be easily fixed." 5 Republicans have said they'll side with Democrats. A manhunt is intensifying for a dangerous inmate who escaped custody twice. Travis Davis was last seen in Oklahoma when police say he stole a police car in handcuffs and crashed it. Before that, he allegedly kidnapped a woman and forced her to drive at gunpoint. Davis has been on the run since Sunday when he broke out of jail in Missouri. He was originally behind bars for several charges, including kidnapping. A major defeat for Johnson & Johnson overnight. A California jury ordering the company to pay $29 million to a woman who says asbestos in baby powder and other products caused her mesothelioma. Johnson & Johnson denies its talc causes cancer and is planning an appeal. The company is facing thousands of similar suits. Can you tell what this kid thinks about picture day? That's kindergartner Andrew Miles, caught mid-scream with his mouth wide open. His mother says she was shocked when she first saw the photos, and she never expected them to go viral. Andrew admits no one told him to pose like that, and he wants to do it again next year. There you go.
And you know what? He's our shot of the day. Look at that.
Thanks, Jillian.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Coming up straight ahead next, President Trump grounding Boeing jets after a deadly Ethiopian crash. Our next guest says those planes need to be redesigned from scratch. Wow.
Plus, California's governor.
Boeing is an incredible company. They are working very, very hard right now. And hopefully they'll very quickly come up with the answer. But until they do, the planes are grounded. The safety of the American people and all people is our paramount concern.
There you got the president yesterday halting all Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 9 planes from taking flight in the United States following an urgent warning from the FAA. Sweeping action comes after Sunday's crash in Ethiopia that killed 157 people from 35 countries, including 8 Americans. Here with reaction, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation Oliver McGee. Oliver, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Yesterday was quite a morning because on this program we were talking about how the FAA stood behind it, said it's absolutely safe. A couple of hours later, the president said, nope, they're all going to land and we're going to figure out what's the matter with it, if anything.
An excellent move by President Trump. He's backing aviation workers, flight attendants associations, as well as the flying public. Today, the flying public, Steve, is very relieved because this aircraft needs to sit down for a moment, and Boeing needs to look at the what we call a clean sheet design.
Okay.
And also to take a look at in the cool of the day and night to see if we can shift the center of gravity of this aircraft more towards the nose. Essentially what we have is an engine mount on the wing, and it's forward on the wing. And when the plane tries to climb, it's hitting a 14 degree angle of attack. And so the computer system wants to pull the plane down, nose down, and then the pilots are trying to correct it, and it has a waving action, and then ultimately you get into a negative stall, then the plane crashes into the ground.
And it sounds like the two planes that crashed were similar. The New York Times is reporting, and apparently some pilots have reported problems before. But Oliver, you just made it sound like, I mean, yesterday we were talking to some people who said maybe just a software fix. You're talking about changing the center of gravity on an airplane. That's more than downloading an app.
You're right. It's a clean sheet design, but also Boeing is also going to consider the option of the software patch. This is essentially what the FAA administrator was saying, but they're cautious because essentially you're trying to use the data between the two crashes and see if you can correct differential lift on the engine in its current position. If they can't get that software patch to look at the differential lift that's coming from the engine, which should not happen, Steve, then they're going to probably have to consider remounting the engine in a different position and moving the CG towards the nose so we can have a better center of gravity of the aircraft.
All right. Well, thank you for making it so simple to understand. Oliver McGee used to be with the Department of Transportation. Sir, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Good to have you. All right. Fox News alert. A mob boss found murdered outside his New York City home. Was it a hit? We're live there next. Plus, feeling the pressure at home or work, this Marine vet knows a thing or two about mental toughness, and he's going to put us through boot camp. Alert. It's like something out of the Godfather movie. A New York City mob boss gunned down overnight outside of his house.
Was it a hit? Robert Moses from our Fox affiliate in New York is live near his house in Staten Island. Robert?
Stephen Ainsley, we are talking about the reputed head of the Gambino crime family, and you can see where police are focusing their attention. This is the crime scene this morning, and that's his home up there at the top of this hill, that brick home with the light on, and it appears as though the front door is open. That's where police have been focusing their attention. Shortly after 9 last night, police tell us that 53-year-old Francesco Calli, who's better known as Frankie Boy, was shot multiple times in front of his home. He was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. Cops have been combing this area for evidence throughout the night. We've seen them shining flashlights and taking pictures as well. Calli may also have been run over by a blue pickup truck in addition to being shot, although that has not yet been confirmed. An autopsy is expected to be performed today. That will tell us exactly how he died. Police haven't named any suspects, haven't made any arrests, or released any description of who they are looking for. Now, this murder recalls a far more violent time in New York City history. It's the highest profile killing of a mob boss since Paul Castellano was shot and killed outside of a steakhouse in Manhattan back in 1985. That paved the way for John Gotti to take over leadership of the Gambino family. But again, this morning, Frank Calli is dead. Police still looking for his killer. Steve, Ainsley.
All right. Bobby Moses in Staten Island. Robert, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's hand it over to Brian.
Yeah, I've forgotten about the mob. It's good to know they're still killing each other, I guess. All right, 25 minutes after the hour. If you're under pressure, dealing with difficult people at home, at work, or even in social media, listen up. Our next guest, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, sharing his secrets to mental toughness for you. He's also an emotional intelligence expert. Eric Rittmeyer's here. Eric, can we all learn to be mentally tough without enlisting?
Anybody can become mentally tough. That's the great thing about emotional intelligence and mental toughness.
All right, you break it up into 4 categories. Number one, when it comes to feelings, you say, don't let your feelings get in the way. What are you talking about?
Unfortunately, a lot of people, the gut instinct for any type of situation they're in is to let the emotions get the best of them. They respond emotionally, and when you respond emotionally to a situation, unfortunately, you're going to do something you probably regret doing.
So when someone attacks you personally or professionally, even about your family, how do you turn down the internal emotion meter?
It's difficult to do. It definitely requires a lot of practice, but basically it's a matter of trying to shelf that initial feeling and understand that I'm feeling an emotion, I can't react emotionally, or I'm going to say something I'm going to regret.
What's wrong with acting emotionally?
Look at politics right now. You'll see the problem with that. Yeah, unfortunately, emotions, you're making bad decisions that way.
You also say to suspend, I guess in the Marines, they scream at you and they try to get personal and they want you to overreact, and that's part of boot camp. They're willing, you say you have to be willing to suspend your disbeliefs. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, go back to the current political environment. Unfortunately, there's a total inability to suspend a disbelief. You believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. I don't want to hear anything. Stop talking. I believe it, you're not changing my mind. That's the problem.
So how do I change that?
You have to internally find a way to take your belief and set it aside and try to understand where somebody else is coming from a logical standpoint.
How do the Marines put that in you?
They beat it into us, actually.
In what way? What do you mean they beat it into you?
They mentally beat it up.
They make sure. They just put you through the paces, and when you overreact, you're not passing. When you underreact, you are.
Absolutely. You cannot do things based on emotion. You have to weigh that out with logic as well.
So compartmentalize, you talk about common ground. What do you mean?
Finding something in common. I think Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, is a prime example of this. He lost his eye. He basically had Chris Evans come to Capitol Hill for some veterans issues, I guess. Apparently, politically, they don't agree on a lot of stuff. Dan actually changed his eye, his glass eye, to be the shield for Captain America for Chris Evans. Political views were very, very different. They agreed on something, veterans issues. It's finding common ground. It's compartmentalizing feelings to find things you agree on as opposed to focusing on what you don't agree on.
And if you keep your emotions down, you're able to think clearly. If your emotions high, it clouds your judgment.
They're inversely related. As emotions go up, logic goes down and vice versa.
And the other thing to keep in mind, too, how often do you lose your temper and regret it? Almost every time.
100% of the time.
You never say to yourself, I'm so glad I flew off the handle.
Yeah, that's the best thing I ever did. Right. I'm glad I called you a bad name.
So you have something else that I think is so lacking, especially as I watch these freshman congresswomen and men come in now. They're not listeners. They came in talking. I look at Cory Booker, for example. He didn't say a word for about a year and a half. It's like, I'm new here. And you watch these other freshmen walk in, and they came in talking. You say, be professional listeners.
Yeah. We have an innate need to be understood, to be heard. Unfortunately, we're horrible listeners. Mentally tough people, they listen with the intent to understand, not with the intent to reply.
Right. And also, I think when you listen and you respond, people bond with you quicker because they know that your views matter.
We're very simple humans.
All right. And it's simple in a good way.
Simple in a good way.
All right. So you want to be mentally tough? Where do we go?
MentalToughnessSpeaker.com.
All right, and he did it through the Marines. You don't have to because he did. Eric Rittmeyer, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me,
and
Brian.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Straight ahead, the video is insane. You got a plane nearly slamming into a truck on a highway. What the driver is saying about that close call. Plus, Pete Hegseth, who I know, going one-on-one with Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. And she's got a strong message for Congress about the border. Pete is here live. Trust me, I just saw him. Oh, there he is.
There's a dream for everyone. For this country and for every single one of us. The challenges that we face right now, the interconnected crises in our economy, our democracy, and our climate have never been greater. We can invest in the dignity of those who work and those who seek to work. We can ensure that every single American can see a doctor and be well enough to live to their full potential. And all of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have.
We are back with a Fox News alert. You just heard from Beto O'Rourke officially launching his bid for the White House. The former Texas congressman throwing his hat in the ring after losing his congressional campaign to Senator Ted Cruz last year. Entering an already crowded field, Beto is the 12th Democrat to officially declare a presidential run.
O'Rourke became a political celebrity, turning to social media to mobilize young voters and minorities. Let's bring in Pete Hegseth, the Fox and Friends weekend co-host. Actually, you went to talk to Mike Pence about immigration. That's one of the things that Beto O'Rourke talks the most about because he actually lives in El Paso, just a couple of blocks from Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, what we do know is that Beto loves Beto. Okay, so let's agree on that. Beto believes he is the second coming of who should run for president, but he wants to tear down the border wall. He believes in sanctuary cities. He doesn't support Kate's law. This is a guy who sees the world completely opposite of President Trump. He's down on the border, believes that illegal immigration is okay, actually the lifeblood of this country. He will define that debate. Listen, he'll have some supporters. He will. But I don't know how he ultimately differentiates himself.
Pete, you know what's attractive about him? If people really believe he can deliver Texas, if he can deliver Texas, he reconfigures the map. You know, that's bigger than the Trump breaking the blue wall.
That's true, but he didn't defeat Ted Cruz. It's not clear how he would defeat President Trump in Texas in 2020.
Or maybe even a Joe Biden.
Or even a Joe Biden. We shall see. But the border will be a big issue. And today, as you all know, a big vote in the Senate, whether or not to uphold the president's emergency declaration. And I had a chance to sit down with the Vice President Mike Pence in West Virginia. There's a training facility for Customs and Border Protection down there. It looks like we're sitting in the woods, but we're actually sitting in a training facility for our border agents. And I asked him, he had a stark message for senators, Republican senators, what this vote means about whether you support the president and security on the border. Take a listen.
All right, Mr. Vice President, what did you see here today? This training facility is where our Customs and Border Protection personnel train through virtual reality and in real circumstances to make sure that the people that are on the front lines have the background and the experience to protect our border and come home safe.
It's a couple of guys in suits out in the woods right now. You were recently on Capitol Hill. The president declared a state of emergency on the border to get access to funds to build the wall that Congress wouldn't build. What is your message to senators on Capitol Hill? It's Republicans at this point wavering on where to vote on this.
It is undeniable that we have a crisis on our southern border. Now, Democrats continue to say that it's a manufactured crisis, but the facts tell the story. What we want to see the Senate do this week is to stand with the president, to stand with the president's declaration of a national emergency. Look, a vote against President Trump's national emergency is a vote against border security. A vote against the president's national emergency declaration is a vote to deny the humanitarian and security crisis that's happening at our southern border. So we're urging every member of the Senate, set politics aside, recognize that we have a crisis. The president has the authority under the National Emergencies Act. Vote down the resolution of disapproval, stand with the president, and stand for border security. That's what the American people want.
Do you see any crisis in legitimacy of a wall that has to be built through emergency funding? Is this something the Democrats will continue to rail against, tear down the wall?
You have to understand that the funding the president requested throughout the government shutdown, the funding that we're appropriating now under the law through the national emergency, is all funding that the Department of Homeland Security told us that they needed to construct a physical barrier, a wall in 10 areas of high-density population where the people wearing the green uniforms of Customs and Border Protection have told us that they need a barrier to do their job and to do it safely.
There's some reporting about an event recently AEI put on. Vice President Cheney had an interview with you, and he came after you and made some comments about how this administration's foreign policy seems more like the Obama administration than the Reagan administration, talking about NATO and the pullout from Syria. Your response to some of those criticisms from former Vice President Cheney?
Well, look, I have great respect for Vice President Cheney, and we had a good, vigorous debate over this past weekend. Look, when I told him when President Trump ran for office, he made it clear that he's no fan of foreign deployments, that he wanted to bring an end to these endless wars. I know there are some who don't like the fact that the president has called on our NATO allies to pay their fair share of our common defense, to live up to their commitments, but I just know that the American people appreciate.
There are many who do like that.
A president who looks at our allies and says, look, we're going to do our part. You need to do your part. And that's what we call being a leader of the free world.
Absolutely. Sticking with vice presidents, Joe Biden, former vice president, make it into the race. He famously called you a decent guy, and he took some heat for it. Your take on Biden possibly getting into the race?
Well, look, they've got an awfully big field on the other side. The reality that you see on the Democrat side is it's largely being driven by the most extreme liberal elements in their party. And the way Joe Biden caved in to liberal activists after making a kind comment toward me is evidence of the pressure that all of their candidates are going to face. So the truth of the matter is you've got a party on the other side that is prepared to run on open borders, socialism, abortion on demand, infanticide, Medicare for all, and the Green New Deal. And I like our chances in 2020.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Pete.
Great job, Pete. And in particular, the way you ended it right there about the field and the difference. Even Rahm Emanuel came out in the Atlantic and said, hey, Democrats, do you want to hand another 4 years to because of the Green Deal, because you're running too far to the left? This is a gift, it seems.
Very much so. And Beto O'Rourke, remember, he's the one who famously said, I want to tear down some of Trump's walls. That's the contrast. Take that to the American people. I think the vice president said it well. They feel confident about that.
And that was a mock wall in the background?
It was a training wall. So we got to actually follow the vice president through training as they train agents. This is the train-the-trainer environment where they then go out and train the rest of Border Patrol. So it's a very cool day.
All right, you got another big interview coming up, right?
Kirstjen Nielsen, the DHS secretary, will be on with us today at 7:30. Of course, she's got a lot to say about this vote as well today.
And is that going to be what you're wearing?
That was in a conference room, not the woods.
Not the woods.
I'm wearing the same thing. Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
I like the camo.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
right.
very nice.
That would have been perfect for the woods.
It would have been.
That would have been great. That's what I'm saying. You have 1 day off.
No, we wouldn't have been able to see him.
Exactly. All right, guys. Pete, thank you very much. We'll see you in an hour.
Jillian's behind you. She has some headlines for us.
Lots
Hey, Jillian.
of compliments on that tie today. I complimented it too. Looks
Oh,
nice.
really?
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Looks pretty good. Okay, let's get you caught up on some of your headlines, starting with this. A smuggler is caught on camera using 2 young girls as decoys at the border. You can see the 2 girls, just 6 and 9 years old, dropped over a wire fence into California to distract border agents. 10 people illegally crossed the border when the agents left their posts to help the children from El Salvador. Some college swimmers will need to stay in another state when they head to the NCAA championships in North Carolina. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo still hasn't repealed a ban on publicly funded travel to the state. In response to North Carolina's now defunct bathroom bill, which required transgender people to use facilities that matched their gender at birth. That rule was tossed out in 2017. It's being called an act of God. A framed photo of the Lord's Prayer stops a bullet from hitting a woman inside her home.
It hit this and fell down behind it. But if it hadn't had the metal there, it might have came on in and hit one of us. It just means he's looking out after us.
Wow, the stray bullet hitting the prayer 2 feet above Constance Effie's head in Kansas City. She had a minor heart attack, but she'll be okay. A 4-year-old boy is stealing hearts all across America with the national anthem. Listen to this.
For the love and of the free.
Slamming the parents charged in that college admissions scam, but didn't she lie about being Native American on her bar card?
Plus, breaking in Washington, Andrew Weissman, Robert Mueller's right-hand man, who's often on the left, reportedly stepping down the judge.
We've got a Fox News alert. Robert Mueller's top prosecutor, his right-hand man, reportedly stepping down this morning, signaling the Russian probe could soon be coming to an end.
We'll see. According to NPR, Andrew Weissman, who was also the architect of the case against Paul Manafort, will leave the special counsel and DOJ.
All right, here to weigh in, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, he's stepping down from a probe that's wrapping up. Is this big news?
Well, it depends how you look at it. He's either stepping down because his part of the probe, Manafort, is now over. He didn't get all the jail time they wanted him to get, but he got enough, and it's over. He's now going to sit in federal prison and presumably be tried here in New York. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is coming to an end. This is all a perfect storm. Manafort sentencing, Gates sentencing, Flynn sentencing, Weissman leaving. That would mean Bill Barr there, Rosenstein leaving. That would mean that the Mueller report, or reports, I believe there'll be more than one, are likely to come out soon. So there's 2 ways to look at this.
And while Mueller's name is on the probe, it's really Weissman who's the face of the probe in court.
He is the most experienced, most tenacious, and most skillful trial lawyer on on their team.
Democrat.
So that
And he's a Democrat.
He is a Democrat, yes. Bob Mueller's a Republican.
We're hearing
That would indicate that he's certainly not going to be the trial lawyer in the Roger Stone case, which presently is scheduled to be tried in October, 7 months from now.
All right, what about Paul Manafort? He got about 7 years, a little bit more than 7 years.
This is a very unusual situation for Manafort. When he pleaded guilty in federal court before Judge Jackson, who sentenced him yesterday, the guilty plea was last year. The nature of what he said acknowledged not only that he committed bank fraud and mortgage fraud that violated federal crimes, but also that violated state crimes. Stated differently, the indictment that was revealed yesterday by a grand jury here in New York City, he has effectively already admitted to the behavior that he's been accused of under that. It'll be very easy for them to prosecute him. Why did they do it? Because they're worried that the president might pardon him, and the president does not have pardon power for state crimes.
What is New York? What's New York's business for? They don't have enough on their plate?
Well, they do have a lot on their plate, Brian, but these were New York banks that he committed the fraud in front of or against for a New York mortgage. The state actually waited until the federal case was over, which is the standard operating procedure.
So the president could pardon him, and yet then he's got to answer for the state crime.
Right. The interesting thing happens is what happens if he's not pardoned? How are they going to try him in state court if he's spending 7.5 years in a federal prison? An issue they'll have to work out.
Let's what can we? I can't wait for the Liberty File today on Fox Nation, which I can get on my app because I ordered it in pay.
Yes. You're so good at this, Brian.
Right. It's your show.
Can
It's Liberty
promote.
File.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All the best.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Judge.
much. All right, meanwhile, straight ahead, a grim prediction. It could be the worst year for measles in decades. Hundreds of cases already confirmed. Now, one Texas doctor says he'll be turning away unvaccinated patients, doesn't want them in his waiting room. He will join us live next.
Plus, feeling the pressure at work or at home? Well, that Marine vet knows a thing or two about mental toughness. He's putting us through boot camp. Coming up. Used to be eradicated, but now the disease is spreading with nearly 280 confirmed cases, and the CDC says 2019 could be the worst year for measles since 1993.
And now a Texas pediatrician is taking a stand, refusing to treat unvaccinated children at his practice as the number of measles cases in his state grows to 11.
And that pediatrician, Dr. Albert Karam, joins us now. Thank you so much, Dr. Karam, for being with us.
Good morning, Stephen Ainsley.
Good morning. Tell us about measles. What are the symptoms?
So measles is a very highly contagious disease. It is a viral infection, not a bacterial infection, so antibiotics can't help you for this. And it causes initially a very bad runny nose, a cough, horribly red eyes, followed by a very particular rash that spreads throughout the body. In cases in which the measles spread, side effects include pneumonia, which can be life-threatening, and then, of course, a devastating disease called encephalitis or inflammation of the brain.
Right. I remember. I had it when I was a kid. Doctor, I understand you had it. You remember what that was like. If the disease was eradicated, why the comeback?
So eradication was declared, I believe, by the CDC in the early 2000s. Comebacks are going to happen from several sources, international travel to countries in which the disease is not eradicated, and then travels will come back into the United States. But the thing we're concerned about is the large number of children who are unvaccinated. And if a measles case gets into that population of unvaccinated children, we will have an outbreak, and it will be bad. For those that think that measles is a benign disease, just as you said, I had it as a child. I remember my mother turning the lights on and I would scream with pain.
Right.
I remember looking at my skin at the horrible rash that I had. So I remember it as a 4 or 5-year-old kid.
What, can you die from it?
Of course you can. Of course you can. All we have to do is look in Europe right now, where there were well over 70, almost 80,000 cases, predominantly in Ukraine, and there were 70-some-odd deaths. Here we are in a modern society, in European society, with that many deaths. And these are preventable deaths.
Right.
This is a preventable disease.
And that's one of the reasons you don't want to see children who are not vaccinated. Doctor, last week we had a young man who testified before Congress. He's now 18. He's now vaccinated himself, but his mother would not vaccinate her children. She's got 3 other kids, I believe, hadn't vaccinated any of them except the young man. What do you say to parents who think that these vaccines are dangerous to their children?
Vaccines are one of the true health accomplishments of mankind. We can talk about all the things that we've done, antibiotics and new surgeries and techniques and stuff, but truly vaccinations have to rank, in my opinion, as the #1 reason that we as a society are as healthy as we are. And so for parents who are doubtful about immunizations, I'm here today to tell you that I have immunized all 6 of my children. My wife and I are proud parents of 6 children. They are all immunized. Their children, my grandchildren, are immunized. Vaccines are safe. Vaccines are effective. Vaccines save lives.
Okay. Dr. Karam, thank you so much.
Sure.
Have a good one. All right, back to the breaking news on the race to the White House. Beto O'Rourke is now in the race. More on his big announcement at the top of the hour.
There he is on his couch with his wife. Plus, coming up on the show, Congressman Kevin McCarthy, we got Newt Gingrich, we got Dana Lash, and you. You're watching.